I was 27, living in a small town in rural Oregon, trying to piece my life back together after a rough couple of years. I'd taken a job as a park ranger in the Siuslaw National Forest, thinking the solitude and fresh air would do me good. The forest was vast, dense with towering pines and fog that clung to the ground like a living thing. Locals called it the Whispering Woods, a nickname I thought was just poetic nonsense, until my first solo patrol on a cold November night in 2019. What happened out there still haunts me, and I've never told anyone the full story until now. It was around 10 p.m. when I set out to check a remote trailhead. My truck's headlights barely cut through the mist as I drove deeper into the forest. My job was to make sure no campers were stranded and no poachers were sneaking around after dark. I had a radio, a flashlight, and a sidearm, but the forest had a way of making you feel small, like you were trespassing on something ancient and unforgiving. The locals had warned me about strange things, lights in the trees, voices where no one should be, but I brushed it off as small-town superstition. I parked at the trailhead, grabbed my gear, and started walking. The air was damp, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. The trail was narrow, overgrown with ferns, and the only sounds were my boots crunching on pine needles and the occasional hoot of an owl. About a mile in, I noticed something odd. The air felt wrong. It was too still, like the forest was holding its breath. My flashlight beam seemed weaker, like the darkness was swallowing it. I checked my radio, but it was just static, no matter how many times I switched channels. Then I heard it, a low hum, almost like a chant, coming from deeper in the woods. It wasn't loud, but it was steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. I figured it was campers, maybe some hippies doing a late-night ritual, so I called out, "This is Ranger Ellis. Identify yourself." My voice echoed, but the humming didn't stop. If anything, it got louder, more insistent. I tightened my grip on my flashlight and started toward the sound, my heart picking up speed. The trail led to a clearing I'd never seen before, which was strange because I'd studied the maps for weeks. In the center was a circle of stones, each about knee-high, arranged in a perfect ring. They weren't natural, too smooth, too evenly spaced. The humming was coming from there, but I couldn't see anyone. I stepped closer, my flashlight flickering now, and that's when I saw the carvings on the stones. They were symbols, sharp and angular, like nothing I'd ever seen. They seemed to pulse faintly, glowing just enough to notice in the dark. I called out again, but my voice sounded muffled, like I was shouting underwater. The humming shifted, turning into whispers, dozens of voices, overlapping, speaking words I couldn't understand. They weren't coming from the stones but from the air itself, circling me, pressing in. I spun around, flashlight darting, but there was nothing, just trees and fog. My chest tightened, and I felt a sudden urge to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like the ground was holding me, rooting me to the spot. Then I saw her. At the edge of the clearing, half hidden by the trees, was a figure. She was tall, impossibly thin, her limbs too long for her body. Her face, if you could call it that, was a blur, like a smudged photograph, but her eyes were sharp, glowing faintly like the symbols on the stones. She didn't move, just stood there, staring. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, and I realized they were coming from her, though her mouth never opened. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, but my flashlight died completely, plunging the clearing into darkness except for the faint glow of those stones. The whispers were inside my head now, clawing at my thoughts, telling me to stay, to join them. I felt something cold brush my arm, like fingers made of ice, and that snapped me out of it. I stumbled back, tripping over a root, and scrambled to my feet. The figure was closer now, maybe 10 feet away, but she hadn't moved. It was like the space between us had shrunk. I ran. I don't know how I found the trail again, but I didn't stop until I reached my truck. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. The radio was still static, but as I peeled out of the trailhead, I heard one clear phrase through the noise: "You can't leave." It wasn't a threat, it was a statement, calm and certain, like the forest itself was speaking. I didn't report it. What was I supposed to say? That I'd seen a ghost or some kind of monster. I finished my shift, went home, and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw those glowing eyes and felt that cold touch on my arm. The next day, I checked the maps again. The clearing wasn't there. I even hiked back in daylight, against my better judgment, but there was no sign of it. No stones, no symbols, just endless trees. I quit the ranger job a week later and moved to Portland, as far from Black Hollow as I could afford. But it didn't help. At night, when it's quiet, I still hear the whispers, faint and distant, like they're calling me back. Sometimes I wake up with dirt on my shoes, like I've been walking in my sleep, and my arm, where that thing touched me, has a faint mark, like frostbite, that never fades. I've never gone back to the Whispering Woods, and I never will. But I know it's still out there, waiting, and I'm terrified that one day, it'll find me again.